Okay, we have a new generation. Intel's 11th gen Rocket Lake processors are out now, memory overclocking. And in this video, we want to find out if it's even necessary or worth it. What the hell, you're not gaining anything from that. You're just spending more money for higher binned kits that are not worth it. That is the point why I needed to do this video in English. And with that, I've done a lot of testing. Compared that to Ryzen CPUs like the Ryzen 5800X, I have the i7-11700K, and I was curious what's about the RAM speed. Yeah, we have now something called like Gear Mode 1 and Gear Mode 2. Does that have anything to do with the FCLK, the Infinity Fabric of AMD's Ryzen CPUs? Does it even matter to have higher clocked memory with those Intel CPUs? I don't know, I want to find it out, and if you are interested in that topic as well, we are going to see each other after the intro, so stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another round of Gax TV. You may actually know my channel from videos out of the YouTube recommendation that were in German and you didn't understand any word. This time I'm going to do my video in English cause Intel has launched their brand new Rocket Lake 11th gen processors, and with that the i7-11700K. That thing is the brand new flagship with that i9 11900K. Both chips are 8 cores with 16 threads and both are on par with AMD's Ryzen processors. So the Ryzen 5800X is the processor I've benchmarked against this processor in my last video. It was in German, but there are some benchmarking results in slides, so you can just jump in the video, check out the results and get a clue about how this processor performs. But in this video, the topic is so important for Intel users that I've decided to make this video in German and in English as well. So yeah, for my German user base, I'm very sorry that you have to hear my stupid voice twice the day, but for everybody else in English, yeah, I'm sorry that you have to hear my bad English pronunciation, because yeah, I'm from Germany and my English skills are limited, but at this point, like I've already said, you can get a clue what I'm talking about, because you hopefully can understand what I'm talking about. What is the topic of today's video? Memory overclocking, and especially B560. That is one of the new chipsets which comes with the 11th gen by Intel. It provides for the first time in Intel's history, when I'm remembering correctly, that a budget chipset is able to overclock their memory. Yeah, that was a key feature for Z platforms like Z490 or Z590. Normally, you were just able to overclock in general with those high-end platforms, so you had to buy a very expensive and most of the time overkill board for that little key feature, and especially with memory overclocking, you would have a lot lower performance compared to overclocked RAM settings. So when I saw that for the first time, that B560, a budget chipset, allows for memory overclocking, I was stoked. I was really hyped about the whole key feature. And it was a very big step forward against the previous chipset, B460, which was a budget chipset and had nearly the same connectivity, but was not able to overclock the memory, which limited the i5 to 2666 MHz. And with the i7 and the brand new 3200 MHz base clock speed for the memory controller, you are now able to overclock even on the budget chipset B560 the memory. At least the memory. The CPUs, even when it's a K SKU like the i7-11700K, you can't overclock the CPU's clock speed, so memory is what you can actually do. And in this video, we want to find out if it's even necessary or worth it, because when we compare memory with 3200 MHz against 3600 or even 4000, 4400 MHz, the difference in performance is really, really low this time, and how low you're going to see in the benchmarks. But what is high is the price difference. And yeah, that's why I'm making this video, that you as a customer are not going to do a mistake by buying very expensive memory for your brand new Intel platform, because 3200 MHz is really the sweet spot this time, especially when we saw AMD's platforms like Ryzen, which benefited because of the FCLK and the UCLK to MCLK ratio, which was highly connected to each other and benefited by a ratio which was set to synchronous, so 1:1. Yeah. This was the reason why 3600 MHz or even higher speeds became so popular, especially for gaming results. I think I was one of the first who actually noticed that behavior and did an in-depth benchmarking comparison. I know that there actually were a lot of other people that dealt with that topic, but still, I think I was really fast on that subject. And yeah, this time I think as the Intel i7-11700K will be released in 2 weeks, yeah, because we actually got very lucky this time in Germany, because Mindfactory screwed up the launch and released this processor like 1 month before it had to be in the shelves. So I could sneaky peeky buy one and test it on my channel. I've used one of my favorite memory kits, which is Trident's 3600 MHz kit, which runs in a native CL15-15-15-35 speed, which is actually a really good Samsung BDI kit, which was already overclocked in my comparison to CL14-15-15-15-35. But then I asked myself, okay, what's about 3200 MHz? So I used exactly the same timings, the same settings, and the results were really interesting. Like, there were no differences between each other. So I was like, okay, when the RAM speed by itself doesn't mean anything anymore for the Intel platform, what is with the timings? CL14 is very, very fast. So what would be if I run the same speed, 3200 and 3600 MHz, with CL16-16-16-36? That was exactly what I've done. At this time, there was no difference either. So what the heck is going on? Yeah, and as it looks like right now, it doesn't really matter if you're going above 3200 MHz. And if anybody saw the video of Gamers Nexus, yes, Steve did a very good job explaining the brand new gear mode 1 and gear mode 2. And does it actually mean that the brand new Intel processors have an FCLK frequency? No, not even close. But what it actually means is the ratio and if it's going to be synchronous or out of balance. Yeah, because there is one more point which was already important for AMD. With the FCLK, it was not only the FCLK that mattered, it was the UCLK and MCLK ratio to each other. So for Intel, there is no FCLK, but there is still the UCLK, which is the actual memory controller frequency, and the MCLK, which is the DRAM frequency. And if both of them are running synchronous, that's the whole deal about the gear modes, because gear mode 1 means nothing else than a ratio of 1:1, and the gear mode 2 means 1:2. When you are looking at it more closely, the memory controller, the UCLK speed, is actually always in an multiplier by 2. So when you're running your DRAM frequency on 4000 MHz, your UCLK speed is going to be half the speed, 2000 MHz. So if you're running in gear mode 1, it is 1:1, so 2000 and 4000. And that is synchronous because it's multiplied by 2. But when it's running in gear mode 2, the UCLK speed is cut in half, and that is tremendously bad. Because instead of that 2000 megahertz of the UCLK speed you've got previously, you're just getting 1000 megahertz to achieve the 4000 megahertz RAM speed. To actually running your memory speeds in a higher pace, you have to lower your UCLK speed. And that was something I was really interested in when I saw the BIOS settings, which allowed actually to set the gear modes in that Intel platform. So I tested out when does it actually scale, yeah, and when are you actually allowed by the CPU standard to run it in a synchronous ratio. So I've tested. I've run 3200 megahertz, I've run 3600 megahertz, and then I've tried out 3733, and then it stopped scaling. Not only stopped scaling, it didn't post when I've tried to run it in an 1-to-1 ratio. So it doesn't matter if it's 3733, 3800, 4000, 4200, 4400 megahertz, it just won't boot in a ratio of 1-to-1. 3600 is the limit, and it is very interesting because the board by itself actually knows that. It knows that because when we are setting the gear mode to auto, it's always going to post in a ratio 1:1 when it's lower than 3600 megahertz. When it's above that, it will post when it's in auto, but it will run when it's above 3600 megahertz. It will run in gear mode 2 to achieve that speed. So in a 1-to-2 ratio. And that by itself was the reason why I've decided to make this video, because to understand that, to really understand what that means, because not even you're not really benefiting from a speed above 4000 megahertz, you're also losing performance when you are trying to achieve those high speeds. Now I would like to show you my benchmarking results in 5 games I've actually tested with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Death Stranding, Control, Horizon Zero Dawn, Metro Exodus in 1080p and 1440p with my RTX 3080. So a very high-end gaming graphics card, which actually is not available at this time. So yeah, one of the best GPUs you actually can buy or could buy. And like I've already said, it was tested on that Asus B560 board with that i7-11700K. The CPU by itself ran in stock speeds. So enjoy my results, and after that we are going to discuss the results by itself. So see you in a moment. Okay guys, I guess it was really surprising when you saw those results, because there were nearly no differences in any means. So when we are checking out the averages, which I have calculated for you out of those 5 games in 1080p, we saw here the 1% lows around the 108 FPS range, and that in nearly every scenario. It doesn't matter if it's 3200 megahertz or 3600 or even 4000 megahertz. And like I've already said, I've tested 4200 and 4400 megahertz, and the results, they didn't change there were just like maybe some measuring differences. So it was not worth my time, not worth your time to include them in those benchmarks because it didn't even matter. And I just wanted to let you know that, yeah, when you're running your CPU above 3600 megahertz, like you see here, it's always going to post in gear mode 2 and lose with that a lot of performance by itself and not even give you any more FPS. So in the average FPSs, you see it's around the 148, 150 mark, and it's all the freaking same. There is no difference between those settings. And in 1440p, right, you see here the 1% lows are around the 90 FPS mark and the averages around the 120 FPS mark. So even here, there is no difference. It is not freaking worth paying, I don't know, twice or even 3 times the price of a 3200 megahertz kit. So my recommendation for Intel right now with the 11th gen and yeah, Rocket Lake. It doesn't matter if it's an i9 11900K, it doesn't matter if it's an i7 or i5. Please make use of the memory controller's stock settings of 3200 megahertz. The kits are running for around 60 bucks and are really, really affordable right now. So don't spend your money on like 3600 highly binned kits for 200 bucks or even more for those 4000 megahertz kits. Especially here, I used CL16 timings. I guess there's just one freaking kit by Corsair which actually has those high speeds. And the prices and the results are not worth it. There is not even a single gain you can actually achieve. So it's not like you are a baller and trying to get the last percentage out of your RAM speeds. No, there will be no difference. And at the worst case, if you're running like gear mode 2 settings, because you were thinking, wait, okay, I'm going to run speeds above 3600 megahertz, going nuts and buy one of those 4600 megahertz kits or even 5300. Yeah, good luck with that. You're going to lose performance and your CPU is not even going to bother at all. That is a really interesting yeah, perspective, because normally Intel always benefited from higher speeds, or at least when it didn't make like big differences, it was able to. And now with those gear modes, yes, you have the option to set those ratios. So was the Intel memory controller always like that? That is something I'm asking myself right now as a customer. Yeah, what is that with B560 allowing memory overclocking when it doesn't even matter? That's the point. It doesn't matter if it's B560, it doesn't matter if it's Z490 or Z590. It's not scaling, so why even bothering about speeds above 3200 megahertz? The point is, the old chipsets like B460, they could run those CPUs, but they actually can't because Intel isn't supporting that. So you're forced to buy these B560 boards, which are advertised as memory overclocking boards. But the hell, you're not gaining anything from that. You're just spending more money for higher binned kits that are not worth it. That is the point why I needed to do this video in English. I hope you get the point why I'm so angry about the results. They are actually good for new buyers, which actually going to buy new kits of memory and are going to pay less when they know that. But the problem is they actually don't know it right now. They're going to buy these memory kits for 4000 megahertz, 4400 megahertz for an astonishingly high price. And then in the end, the customer is going to see my video, hopefully, and are looking at that, what the hell? Why didn't anybody tell me that? And yeah, that was the perspective I was looking at that, because I was advertising B560 as the new budget king because it allowed for memory overclocking, but it doesn't really care. So what's the point? I don't know. The CPUs by themselves, like the i7-11700K, is a really good price budget, you know, for around 399, is really competitive against the Zen 3 CPUs, like the Ryzen 5800X, which is actually retailing for around 430 euros, I think around 450 US dollars. So it is cheaper. It is nearly the same performance. Of course, it is, actually having a higher power consumption. I know that, but the price point, right? That is all fine with that. Intel actually is undercutting AMD's CPUs, and especially in the low end, like with the i5-11500 or 11400. You're actually getting 65 watt TDP CPUs, which are under $200 and actually performing around the Ryzen 5600X range, which retails for, I don't know, above 300 US dollars, 330 euros. And actually that is competitive. AMD has to do something with their pricing, and Intel has to do something with their advertising, because the marketing around B560 about the whole memory bullcrap is really shady, and I don't know, it is making a bad light out of a really interesting CPU generation, which already has some struggles because the marketing by itself is really, really damaged right now. The whole image around Intel is the biggest show ever. So yeah, I hope you understand my standpoint at this point, and I am very thankful that you tuned in. Let me know if you enjoyed my English video and if you would like to see me talking in my really bad English in the future again. So at this point, there's nothing else to say then. Yeah, thank you for joining in, and gaming fitness, that's you see on Gax TV.